Okay. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Um, we are hopefully, maybe not get into some scripture, look at something today that kind of opened up to us yesterday, at least gave us a thought on this. Uh, maybe look at this and see something here. But it was very appropriate yesterday in the way we opened and what we talked about. And we thought we'd do it, look at it again today. A question was asked on yesterday uh, about the things that we're seeing, the election, or the start of the new year, what that means for the virus, and people, some being anxious, some seeing this as an opportunity to get their lives back to normal, or churches opening their doors further and allowing more and more people in. And we tried to address those things. We talked about some anxieties. We talked about what normalcy looks like anymore, and some expectations of the new year. So if Pastor will, I'll open it up to him, and then maybe we'll see if we have some other questions that we will go into and let that kind of dictate how we go about order today. Okay? So, Pastor, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Floor is
Yesterday,
yours, sir.
when okay, when those questions came yesterday, I actually had already been guided in the direction of the vaccine, and I'll get to that. We talk about things returning to normal. That's not going to happen, and we should be elated about that because normal means that we go back to police killings, we go back to inequities, we go back to those things that have been detrimental not only to us as a people, but to society in general. So, what we called normal was far from being normal. It was actually abnormal to to see something differently. Most people will refer to it as being a new normal, but normality is not new normal. It's just normal. Period. However, um, when we say that, we know that there are people whose hopes are actually tied to what has been deemed to be normal. Well, the hopes that has been tied to what we deem to be normal are actually predicated on who has been elected to office by Harris, Biden Harris administration. Please know this: peace and harmony does not come from a government at all. Of course, government will change on our behalf. Our focus is on influencing the government from a spiritual perspective. What I am saying is this: our salvation is not in the hands of Biden or anyone else administration. The government has been used by our creator to expose the inequities in this society, in this world, period. Doing so, there has been much suffering. And our continued experience, our continued rather journey, has to bring some semblance of understanding not only to what is going on, but what we have to look forward to. Um, the exposures that we have experienced, especially for years, have actually ended in that we are in an era where we are going to begin to see manifestation manifestations of what we are searching for, and that is harmony, peace, and joy, loving kindness. Um, these attributes will not come the way we think they are. They're not going to come from a pulpit. As a matter of fact, um, it has been my belief and spoken before it even occurred in January of last year that church doors would begin to close. And how they were going to close, I had no clue. However, that has come to fruition. It is doubt that traditional religion is dead because it has not served the purpose of the scriptures, but it has served the purposes of the government in that it has been a source of bondage for humanity and for the African in particular. So again, our hopes predicated on what we believe and the truth that we see. Based upon that, I say I rather have changed has changed my mind or my attitude, I should say, because my mind was not involved, has changed my attitude about the vaccine. Heretofore, some of you know that I told you I was not taking it until we saw how others were going to respond or react to it. Well, I was reminded of the scripture um, that says, what they mean for your bad, we mean for your good. God means for your good. And I was reminded that we are, if we are to be who we say we are, knowing who we are, knowing how we are fearfully and wonderfully, knowing whose image we're made in, we are obligated to take the vaccine. And the reason I say that is because um, just like Moses put the stick in with poisonous and it became sweet, meaning that it was no longer poison. We have the power, the ability, and the wherewithal to bring this vaccine to a place of service as opposed to a place of manipulation. I do clearly understand that the research that has been done in the world of medicine has been done on us as a people. The gynecological research that was done on females during slavery um, what was done without anesthesia, and many African women suffered and died at MUSC during the course of this research. I understand that research was done on syphilis by injecting African male with syphilis at Tuskegee. And these are some of the reasons, among others, that we are skeptical about the vaccine. However, we are in a different era now. We understand who we are, and based upon the powers and abilities that we are and have been, embracing that gives us the opportunity to transform anything that is bitter to a thing that is sweet, meaning anything that is designed to manipulate or to injure, we have the ability to transform it into something that is beneficial to humanity. By virtue of our saying we're going to wait until we see what's going to happen with Caucasians because we know they go get it first. What we are actually saying without saying it is we are going to do to them what they did to us. We're going to let them be the guinea pigs. We're going to let them be the research rats. And then after we see what happens, we're going to take it. That itself is in line with something that Ron said yesterday about an article that he read where the leadership suggested that the vaccine be carried to Africa and tested in Africa before they would accept it in Italy. And that is no different than what we were saying when we say we go wait and see what happens. That is not who we are. We are we are the created beings that came from a place of spirituality that the world has not yet truly experienced. We are made in the image and likeness of our Creator. And that image and likeness is not physical, that image and likeness is spiritual. If you look at the creation of Genesis, the first chapter, when it talks about creating the man and the woman in the image, it's not talking about hands, legs, and feet. It's talking about the spiritual image of our Creator. Realizing that's who we are, that's how we arrived at the understanding that it is imperative that those who are seekers of truth, those who have embraced the spiritual nature of our being, are the ones who must take this for the benefit of humanity itself. Are there any questions about that? Oh, and let me add to that before I get questions, if there are any. We are the change. Change does not come from what has always been, and that is a manipulative government supported by manipulative religion. Change comes from the realm of the spirit through the hearts of those who have truly embraced the nature of their being and the essence of who they are supposed to be in reference to being beneficial to creation, to creation as well as the created. Any questions? Comments? If not, Ron.
Are there any questions on anything else you want to talk about as the new year arises, as some of the things that Pastor addressed? Do you have anything you want to talk about, even though it may be different than what the subjects that we just covered? Anything?
Ron, good morning. This is Star. No,
Go ahead.
Good morning.
I yield to Evelyn.
How you know it was me? But anyway, thank you, Barbara. What I was about to say is, I think the only people who wanted this to go back to normal are the Europeans, because they have the privileges that we don't have. They have separate laws than what we have. So I think they're the only ones who saying that they want things to go back to normal. And I think us as African Americans, we want things to be better. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn. Anyone want to address what Evelyn's comments before Barbara goes?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
It's not only the Europeans who wanted to, those of European descent who wanted to go back to normal. It is Africans as well, because we have been ingrained with the thoughts that everything is okay. There are those who are doing well. There are those who feel like as long as they're doing well, it doesn't matter for anybody else. And I'm talking about African Americans. So when we talk about going back to normal, we are a part of that as well, because of the depth of indoctrination that we have received through the years. It's not only an indoctrination of the mind, but it's also passed on through genetics. Spiritual genetics pass on attitudes, aspirations, and emotions.
Thank you, and I stand corrected.
It wasn't a correction as much as the amplification.
Yeah, because we clearly understood what you were saying. Yeah. Anyone else on that particular subject before Barbara? Okay, the floor is yours, Barbara.
Thank you very much. I just have a comment to make about what happens now. and we've already determined within ourselves that this virus is going to be eradicated sooner than later than what most people think. In terms of our government and what's going on with the people in the world, in the world. Because I got to remember, I know that what happens in the United States affects the world, but I keep telling myself that not only are we hurting here, people are hurting all over the world. And when we talk about humanity, that humanity is not just limited to the United States, it's limited to us all. Having said that, what happens here in this country does indeed directly affect the world. And in the next couple of days, when we have this vote out of Georgia, we need to put in the macro something related to the fact that our future does not depend on whether a Democrat or a Republican gets elected. Of course, our desire is that a Democrat would be more effective from Georgia, those two senators, to help with the agenda of the incoming administration. But by and large, bottom line is, it doesn't matter if two Democrats don't get elected. We have the power to influence what's going on in the minds and hearts of leaders. Even so, even though it doesn't seem like it's manifesting now, I believe that what we need to put in the macro is that, and what we need to keep in the macro, what's already in there, that our desire is for balance and harmony for mankind. And so whatever it takes to achieve that, to get it, which means that any plans, any programs, any positions put forward that are detrimental and hurt the people are things that will that will fail. They will fail, regardless of who's in power. So that's the main thing I wanted to just make sure we put in the macro and keep in the macro, that it doesn't matter. As Pastor said when we first got started, no government, no man, nothing. Our salvation is not in the hands of any person or government. And so regardless of what happens on Tuesday, we need to remember that. Thanks.
Okay. Before I ask any follow-up what Barbara said or any other subject, I want to ask Barbara or Pastor, whoever else wants to do this. I want to talk about, or I want you to explain rather, the importance of what we mean when we say put stuff in the macro and micro. Why is that so important? And what do we mean by that? But before we go there, I want to see if there anybody else wants to add to what Barbara has said, and or is there something else that's on your mind that we that may bear discussing?
This is Audrey. Good morning.
Hey, Audrey. Good morning.
I have a comment question that kind of stems from what Pastor was saying, but I can hold on until we finish with the other.
No, please go ahead, because the macro thing will kind of take us into the verses I want to get into. I appreciate her saying that, and it'll kind of be a segue into another discussion, if that's okay. So if you would, please, this is the perfect time.
Okay, my comment question. Okay, here I go in left field. Pastor was saying that with all the testing that was done on African Americans way back when, basically because we were being treated like animals, but But he said in the current era, he's reminded of the verse that what they meant for our evil, God meant for our good. Here's my question. Didn't that same verse apply for when we were being tested for gynecological reasons, for when we were being tested for syphilis, for when we were being done, whatever we were being done to? Didn't that apply then?
It did.
I mean, because we are an incredibly resilient people. I mean, we have our trauma and our drama and whatever, but we still are an incredibly resilient people. And all of that, you know how we all have our own path to go on, and they all lead to the Creator? Was that not just part of our path to help us be sure of who we are?
That
And
was
could
part
it
of
be
our
that,
path.
and could it be that they even realized something in us that they couldn't see in themselves? That's my question.
Yes, that was applicable at that time. However, if you don't embrace who you are, then your thoughts, your attitude buys into the system itself. And when it does that, then you don't see hope. You don't see yourself as having the power to change those things that are happening to you. For example, here we are. We are at a place now that we have longed for the last 4 or 5 years. We have talked about um, the necessity and the exposure of the isms, racism, misogynism, etc., and the impotence of religion. We've longed for those things, and they came about. Well, during that period of testing, um, everyone was looking to the government for change and not to the creator, not to the powers that we were created with. It was this expectation that the government was going to come to our rescue when the government itself were the perpetuators of the testing and the protectors of those who were doing the testing. And that is the major difference. But however, it did serve a purpose in that it is part of the um, foundation rather, that pushed us to where we are now. Our getting tired of being sick and tired caused us to ask questions about the things that we have been taught from a spiritual perspective. And without getting answers, we began to search on our own. And in doing so, recognition by our Creator brought us together as a group of people who are diligently searching for the truth of what's not only in the book, but what is the nature of spirituality. Because when people are fed spiritual food, um, that means that they are being fed the true understanding of what a spiritual life is, resulting in peace and harmony. That was not taking place then, and neither was it taking place after that. It is very recently that we have been uh, indulging in delving into an understanding of the spiritual. And the results of that we can see manifested in Black Lives Matter, manifested in the election of Donald Trump, manifested in the protection of white supremacists, manifested in the exposure of the protection that Democrat gave to white supremacists and the burdens that they help to keep on our shoulders, while at the same time saying that they are our liberators. Does that help you, Audrey?
Yeah, I agree. I think the purpose was to help us eventually realize who we are. And yes, I agree. We were, so to speak, looking for love in the wrong places. So yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes, sir. Is there anyone else? Questions or comments? A few minutes ago when Bobby was talking, and we say this a lot, and we talk about putting things in the macro. We talk about the spiritual significance of doing things, and I just want to ask. Yes, sir.
Excuse me 1 second, because when you get there, I know where you're going to segment into those scriptures, right? A segue. You're going to segue
Yes.
into. Right. Okay. Let me say this before you do that. Okay.
Okay.
I want to express this very strongly. When Jesus did not teach Christianity, the teachings of Jesus went forth from the apostles and others. And the Romans took portions of what Jesus taught. And in doing so, they branded it as being Christianity and manipulated the teachings for the express purpose of domination. So when we talk about Christianity, we must understand that the years after Jesus' resurrection, it was simply the spiritual teachings of Jesus. And in the second century, maybe AD, is when Christianity came into being, based upon a group of religious zealots who called themselves Catholic priests, which means universal religion. The term itself, universal religion, means that this is going to be the religion that everyone adheres to. And that was Christianity. So when we talk about this, we have to keep that in mind, that this Christianity that we are talking about is not what Jesus taught. The truth of what Jesus taught is far different than focusing on tithe and offering and having an insatiable desire to be in a building during a pandemic and separating people to the extent that people without means, poor people, don't even go to church anymore because Christians make them feel bad and feel like they're not being blessed and they're not worthy of being within that building. So these things, these principles we keep in mind, because what Jesus taught is nowhere near what Christianity calls itself. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Pastor and or Barbara, I want to talk about macro for just a minute. The difference between macro and micro. What do we mean when we discuss that? And most of us know the answer who have been on this journey for the years that we have. But that for those who are new at this, why is that so important? And what is it that we're trying to accomplish when we say we're putting something in the macro?
Okay. Most of us who know it, please jump in. When I talk about macro, I'm speaking about at a much higher spiritual resonance than physical than the physical world. Everything is a vibration in creation. Everything is based on vibration as one of the components, and spiritual things vibrate at a much higher frequency level than do say tables and chairs, which are much denser and have a much lower vibration level. And when we talk about the macro is putting things, making things available at that level, that spiritual level, so that we who are beings created in the image of Elohim, when we are open in terms of our, I don't want to say our minds, but our, when we open ourselves up to questions about who we are, what are we supposed to be doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What does this mean? The universe reveals to us that all those answers are already in us at a level that vibrates spiritually with where the universe is. And so when we talk about the macro, we're saying seed the spiritual realm. Seed meaning sow, words of positivity, words of renewal, words of harmony, words of blessing, words of balance. We're simply uncovering those things and making them available to other people who are at the point where they want to uncover it within themselves. So it's not necessarily out there as much as it's an inward kind of thing. When I say micro, it relates to more physical kinds of things. What's happening in the physical world that can be influenced by the spiritual. And that sounds complex, so if somebody can make it more simple, please do. But that's what I mean when I say macro, so that anybody who's seeking has access to what's already in them.
I like that. I think that's very well said. But is there someone else who'd like to add to it?
Yeah, I'll
yeah, Ron.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Sheldon. Go ahead, Sheldon, my brother. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I was just going to say when Barbara talked about words, what came to my spirit is something that I heard, that words that you are not allowed to speak, you don't study. And what I wanted to relate to that is that sometimes when we talk about our freedom, when we talk about coming into the knowledge of knowing who we are, that if we're not allowed to speak that we are, African kings or queens, if we're not able to speak the truth in terms of who we are, then we don't have the sense to be able to appreciate, to study it or to talk about it or to relate to it. So as we go into, 2021, I just want to, be able to just give thought to when we talk about putting out there in the macro, is that this is something that's available to humanity. And I think that if we can, appreciate, that journey, I know for me personally, something that I probably would not have studied because I did not talk about it. So I think that what we talk about in terms of the comments that Barbara mentioned, I can relate to that because that's, again, where I know I need to be and want to be. So I just wanted to share that thought.
Thank you, George. Very well said. Yeah.
With what George and Ms. Barbara just said just now, I was thinking in terms of of how they were explaining the inwardness, and it is the wanting to share that knowing of one self and love and compassion through ourselves, and wanting the world and everyone else to be able to experience and have the same thing. So it's the same as sharing an extremely loving moment with a close loved one, being that a family member, etc. And when she talks about the vibration and things being vibration, is the same thing as how, with those things of compassion and love, we are affected in a way that we cannot necessarily accurately define. We kind of know how it feels. They're like an electric pulse in terms of like your heart feeling energized, etc. And then further, we experience these things on a macro level, on a global level, when it comes to movements. Anyone who has ever participated in a protest, anyone who's even ever been at a large game or something, like some type of sporting event, and as the entire crowd cheers and gas and pause collectively, that in a sense is a smaller version of what it is that we're talking about, putting something in the macro. So it's just with us being on this line and having these discussions and trying to not well to experience who and what we are, is not just for ourselves. It is for everyone to participate and have that same understanding. Earlier today, when Pastor Richard talked about, it is not through the government that we will be, in a sense, saved. And what we're doing, I know certainly myself and some of the others on the call, some of the teachers have for ourselves looked and sought for things from the government, just as Audrey and Pastor Richard were talking about earlier with the syphilis experiments and things like that, seeking these things from the government, but now seeing and understanding that we were to look to ourselves for those particular things. And that liberation, not only for ourselves, for others, the same people who are right now in this particular moment oppressing people, for them to experience the same exact things, because they also have to do or go down the same journey, or the same in a sense, in terms of who and what they really are, regardless of if they are not aware of it at all. So when Barbara, and I hope I'm not rambling, was talking about connecting from the inside to the out, it is those things that I just discussed that we feel very, very deeply internally when we experience those things. And it is the desire for others to share in on that same exact thing for themselves, is the part of the macro being connected from that with which is within ourselves. I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sheldon. Between the three of you, I think we have any questions, though. I want to make sure everybody understands that, because that is sort of the metaphor of these verses I want to look at. I want to look at that.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I have a question that was texted to me about
Okay.
reiterating. We're talking about the vaccine.
Okay.
The only thing I think I can say to make it a little bit clearer is that because we understand that we are the image and likeness of our Creator, we embrace that wholeheartedly. Once we embrace that and made the commitment to travel the journey to bring harmony and peace to the earth without regard to what it costs us, without any regard for the consequences. We have committed to do that. And having done so, it is no different than when Moses was in the wilderness with the Hebrews. He said to them, when they were in the midst of vipers, he said to them, "Do not look down, lest you die from the poison bites." And they were supposed to ignore the vipers by not by not looking at them. What he is actually saying, focus on who you are and who you trust. And in doing so, you will overcome the poisonous nature of what you are in the midst of. And what I am saying about the vaccine in that regard is because we know who we are, because our focus is on the energy, the life of this earth, we have the power. We are the power that has the ability to transform anything that is adverse to humanity to something that will benefit humanity. So even if the vaccine is used, the intent of it is for manipulation, it will not be able to do that. We make sure by virtue of our invoking the essence of our being, we will make sure that it is beneficial, even if it was not intended to be, or even if there were errors made in the creation of it. And I hope that that helps. If not, please raise the question, or at the very least, send another text message. I did not
Don't want to
receive.
move along too fast. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. You did not.
No, I did not. I have not
Okay.
received.
Okay. Even if we are move on, if you still need clarity or have another question on that or anything else, I hope that everyone knows by now we go in the direction that the energy says we go into. So if someone has a question about something that even seems like it is not worthy of discussion or something that we haven't talked about in the past, you know that we will go there. We'll drop everything we have to and go and answer your question. So with that said, you can text or stop us at any point and ask a question or make any comment that you wish to make, okay? But I will go ahead and start this. I want to look at something, and I'll tell you how we got here. If you would, please, let's look at the 4th chapter of Matthew, and starting with verse 18. I want to see something here. And I'll tell you how I got to this point. Okay, 4th chapter of Matthew. And what I'm wanting to talk about is, what does it mean to be a disciple? And I don't mind telling you, I had a difficult time finding scriptures because of and this is totally my opinion. It seems like a great effort has been put forth in the New Testament to hide meanings of phrases and words, and you know, you look things up and you want to see what this means or that means, or you see, you know, as Barbara said, in the macro, you feel and you know that there's more out there. And when I can't see it, it kind of gets me a little frustrated. But I was looking at these verses starting at verse 18, and 19 is the one that caught my attention. It says, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. I want to talk about what it means to be a disciple. I study with expectations. And the expectations I study with has a lot to do with the macro. There's truth out there. There is enlightenment there that I like to glean from. And we as teachers get together and discuss things. But even when I'm looking at something by myself, I ask questions that I expect to be answered. So the macro gives me that expectation. As we were talking yesterday, I saw something. I listened to what everyone was saying when we especially got in the discussion about the vaccine. And I listened to what Audrey and Barbara and Sheldon said, and then Kathy, I think, came at the end, and Pastor came and kind of tied it up. And I listened to all that. And what I recognized was the peace and the comfort that I had when the discussion was finished, or nearing completion anyway. And what I concluded from that is we just put something in the macro. We just put something out there to bring peace and comfort. And the supposition came to me as, what if the things that trouble us so that we can put things out there that people can see and people can grab comfort from? So it may not be that the apprehension that I felt just was strictly mine, but for mankind to be at peace about what he may not know about this vaccine and the apprehension that he may be feeling from that. So when we talk about that, the disciple is not only a learner, I'll go ahead and say it, apostle is kind of interchangeable there, because one learns and one goes out and teaches. And we have become those things. And I want to talk about what that means, because it is a very powerful thing. It is something that we all seek. And I want to talk about what it means. And so when we talk about these things and we have these lessons, that it is not just for the people on the phone, and that you feel and grow from that energy as well. Any questions or comments on what I said? And again, like Sheldon said, I hope I'm not rambling.
What do you mean it's not just for the people on the phone?
Well, as I was saying, I don't think that the apprehensions that we were feeling were just for us. I think if there are people out there that are feeling uncomfortable about things, that are searching for truth and searching for answers that they can't get anywhere else, they find those comforts in the macro. How many times have we taught something and see somebody else teaching it a few weeks or a month later in another service or on television or something? It's stuff that you put out there. And if you are seeking truth, as I said, I fully aware and expect to get answers when I go into meditation about a scripture or about anything for that matter. So when I say we're not doing it just for the people on the phone, I'm saying we all, through love and kindness and desire for others to see this and learn this, we put it out there in the macro. We put it in the universe. And again, as Barbara way have said, I was glad that Sheldon and George went into an explanation. And Pastor, if you can kind of explain it further, simplify it further, please do, because it sounds complicated, but it really is not. Does that help what I just said?
It does. And I don't think that I can make it any simpler than it has been stated. However, if
Okay.
were to ask the question, oh, I know the simplicity of it would come if the question is raised. Because when the student is
Okay.
ready, the teacher appears. When the question is raised, it comes.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Kathy, and I wanted to, you know me, I like to take my time and kind of mull something over. And we were talking about macro. I want to see if I understand it the right way. In the universe, the essence of the Creator is in all things. And we talked about this essence is a pulsating energy that is alive. And I see it as the formation of thought. So when we talk about putting something in the macro, it is the thoughts and energies of the Father that puts us into rhythm with the essence of everything that He is in the universe. So it gives me the ability to think like the Father and bring balance to myself, putting me in rhythm with the way everything is in rhythm with how the Creator created all things. An example of that to me is just in the earth realm. When my body is out of rhythm, I have erratic breathing. I may have an elevated heart rate, all of these things. But when everything is in rhythm with my body, everything's in balance. My blood pressure goes down. My heart rate becomes normal. We understand that in the physiological sense with the body. I see putting it in the macro when I attach to the right thoughts, the energy, the thoughts of the Creator. It brings rhythm and balance and harmony to everything. So when we're saying we're putting something in the macro, we're giving you the opportunity to have the right thoughts so that you are in rhythm now and flowing in the essence and the true essence of who the Father is and not unbalanced, if that makes any sense.
It does indeed. Thank you. It makes very good sense. That's excellent. The point I'm making by this is what we are doing is being disciples and delivering truth without even being aware of it. And well, I think we're all aware of it because we all understand the macro part of it. We do, but just the power behind what we're doing. And as I said, I am convinced that, because I think what got me to thinking about this, and you may have said this yesterday, Kathy, we get over something and then we walk back into fear. And those isn't the word you use, but that's how I saw it because I was trying to develop a thought. And I'm thinking, well, what if that is not your fear? What if you picked up on the fear of someone else out there who cannot see what you see? And that's their way of getting your attention and getting enlightenment. So in return, you deal with this fear, you deal with this anxiety, and you discuss it to the point where you bring enlightenment to it and you put it back out there. So now when that person, as you mentioned, goes through a breathing or a meditation or just kind of talk things out, their vision changes. And the whole point of it is sort of what Pastor talked about with Moses, keeping your eye on the serpent. You have to take your eye off, and that's where the breathing comes in, and we've all done this. You have to take your eye off the problem and just say, okay, let me just breathe and see where I am here, what I'm doing here. And that is when your enlightenment or your breakthrough comes about. So I'm seeing as disciple, I'm seeing that as someone who never fully becomes. You are always becoming. You are always the one who stands in the gap. You're always the one who shows a path of comfort. You're always one that is in a timely way bringing about change and it echoes this in that 19th verse, even where he says, "Follow me." Follow talks about to take seize or something, to catch something, to take hold of it, and to know that it is never ending. It is something that is going to be continuous. And it even part of when I was looking up, I am talks about being on an ongoing journey and seeing different places of consciousness or different states of awareness. So the following is not something that doesn't end. I am taking you on a journey of enlightenment. I'm taking you to a place, and as Pastor said, he said earlier when he was discussing something else, and I just remember this part. He said, "We are the change. You are the change you look for." So you look for light, you look for solutions, and you don't know when or how that change takes place, but one day you just notice that it has changed. And not only are you no longer apprehensive about this thing that once bothered you, but you are also moved to a place that you can bring comfort to others. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I looked at several verses on this and has had questions galore as to what it, to show examples of discipleship. And this is the one I settled on with that 19th verse. I'm going to read this though in its entirety and leave it open for discussion. And we don't have to go through it verse by verse or word by word, but if you want to, feel free just to talk about what you see. Starting with verse 18, and walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said unto them, "Follow me, or I'll make you fishers of men." And they immediately left the net and followed him. Now that part I want to talk about, they immediately left the net. Why did they do that? And going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee, their father, mending their net, and he called them, and they immediately left the boat and their father and followed him. So how does this define or describe, rather being not define, how does this describe being a disciple or talk about discipleship? Okay, that's what I'm hoping we can glean from this. One of the first things that I see, and I'm going to read a verse to you, because the first thing I would ask is what made them immediately go? Did they have an expectation? Were they waiting for something? What made them immediately go and leave their nest, their way of life, their living way of making a living? What made them drop everything to do this? And in the case of James and John, they left not only their way of life, they left their father behind. So this is talking about a transference of authority in their lives. So what is taking place here? One of the things that I thought was appropriate, because like I said, I was all over the place last night looking at this, but I want to find a verse that I'll read to you. You don't have to go here. I'm just going to read this to make a point. I'm in John, the first chapter. I was looking at John 2, and verse 44 in this first chapter, 44 and 45 says, "Now Philip was from Bethsaida and the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said unto him, We have found him whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." So what was their expectation? If you go back and look at most, if not all, indigenous people, all of them have a knowledge of or a oneness with a higher God, regardless of whether they called him or knew the history of the Hebrews or not. They all felt something. And what am I saying? I'm saying Christianity has become a religion, or is a religion, where you take it on and put it off. It is not a way of life. For these people, being Hebrews, or being, in part of the Hebrew nation, was a part of their life. It's their way of life. This is not just a religion. This is something to describe who they are. So when you look at this, as I mentioned, I'm reading a book now on Native Americans and talks about how spiritual they are. They do not use the name Jesus. They do not use the same talk about the scriptures and stuff that we talk about, but they have a feeling and a what am I trying to say? It's a part of their makeup, knowing who they are, or recognizing that there is a being that guides them. There is a God that supports them. There is a higher being that shows them and helps them identify who they are. And we are one of the fewer people in being Christians who don't feel that or don't see that. So them walking by the sea and Jesus seeing them and talking to them is not something that would readily happen to us. It was not something that we would can identify with wholly and say, okay, I'm going to drop who I am. I'm going to drop this because this thing that I've been waiting for, this part of me that has been missing that I've been waiting for an answer for, I see it now. It can be answered. It can be open up that part of me that has been dormant for so long or been missing in my life. Am I making sense at all? No? At least
No,
tell me if this makes sense to you.
I want you to repeat that latter part, what you said.
Pastor, I don't remember. I can't remember. I think what I'm saying is, I think I compare the Hebrews here with the indigenous people, that they had an expectation. They had, even though described in the Pharisees tried to control this, they, from knowing the Old Testament and knowing the scriptures, this was not just religion to them. It was a way of life, knowing that there was a higher being, there was a higher part of them with an expectation that I will one day get to see truly who I am and what that means. And that's probably what I said before, but that's what I meant.
But that's the gist of it. What I'm getting from that, well, what I saw while you were talking, is that we never find where the indigenous people, be they in this part of the hemisphere or the other, we never find where they actually were told. Who told you that you are one with nature? Who told you that that there is a greater, those kinds of things. So where did this come from? And the reason I raise it in that manner is that I was perusing an article that Kathy had sent me with various religions, and it piqued my interest because I had taken a class in comparative religions, but some of the ones that were in the article I was not familiar with. Yet, what I saw is that every group of people believed that there was a greater being. when I began to when I looked at the origins, all of them were in the East. And when I looked at the agnostics and atheists, that was in the West. Being an agnostic or an atheist was foreign to any people other than Europeans, and it started in France. And it started in France with philosophers and scientists who had actually rewritten what they had stolen from the philosophers of Egypt. So what I'm saying is this: when the reason they were able to leave so quickly and to engage with Yeshua is because they had been reared to believe and had been shown in their own lives that there is a greater being. And they were very much aware that there had been prophets prior to their existence in physical form in this earth. Not only that, but their teachings, even though they were suspect coming from the priesthood, there were teachings by the elders that taught them what it meant to be one with the earth and about greater beings. I mean, greater spiritual entities than they were. So it did not shock me that they were able to immediately follow Jesus. Have you ever walked into a place and someone said that there is something different about you? I can't put my finger on it, but I see something different about you. This is the insight that they were utilizing when Jesus called them. They saw something, they felt something, they heard something, but they did not know exactly what it was. And I believe that is the reason they left everything to follow him. And I do believe that the reason it is written the way it is because it is speaking to leaving our ambitions and leaving our not only ambition but our anxieties, leaving everything behind us. Meaning that the thing that is priority is to understand or get a deeper understanding of the spiritual essence of who we are for the benefit of humanity. In their particular case, it was we're leaving to be taught so we can become teachers. We are submissive to this teacher, to this rabbi. We're submissive to him because he is speaking to us as he sees it from the higher being, from a wound. Now, when when the when the people in the East, especially the Semitic in the Semitic languages, when they talk about when Jesus said that if you have seen the Father, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Well, what he is saying is that um, when you hear what I am saying, you are hearing the Father also. When you experience what I am experiencing, you are experiencing the Father also. It was no different than an emissary or an ambassador leaving the king and carrying the message of a king to another country. That ambassador was just as the king was because the words that were in that ambassador became one with that ambassador, and he became the messenger. He became the mouthpiece for the king. So there was no difference in obeying or disobeying the messengers than it was the king. And that's what Jesus was speaking to. And that is the reason they were able to follow him so quickly without question, with the exception, of course, I think of Nathaniel.
Yes. Yeah.
Ron?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Pastor. Yes, ma'am.
Pastor, what you described to me sounds a lot like the macro, the creator representing the macro, and people accessing and knowing that there was something different, that they received that from the macro, even though they could not understand or perhaps put their finger on what it was. But it sounds very much like what we were talking about in terms of the macro itself and what's available. The macro being the created being, and when people access that, then they access that knowledge and that understanding, that wisdom from the created being.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that with the last few things that were said. When you were talking about the natives or the indigenous people having this acknowledgement of the creator without ever having even been told a story about Jesus, and then you compare that to that of the philosophers. And what I noticed, and I noticed what we've been talking about also when we keep every time we talk about thoughts towards the macro, we're talking about a deep desire, which is also a recognition for everyone to participate in this. Those native people, ever since they were first reared, they were raised to recognize the spirituality or the importance of everything. So there was a respect and a gratitude for all the animals and the plants. Um, and when they were eating or whatever, there was an appreciation for that food or those plants provide nourishment in their body, and they were grateful for that. They didn't look at it as just something; it was just some solid object for them to actually consume. There was an appreciation for the seasons and quote unquote mother nature, which that in itself is very deep in terms of providing the conditions for their survival and things like that. Contrasting that to the philosophers, and it was only an intellectual exercise where all those things that I mentioned were taken for granted, not recognized, and ignored to the point where they never could feel a part of these things. So from that standpoint, and even being raised in that, I say mindset because they were only in their minds on purpose, they in a sense did not participate in what we consider as being the macro. Things stopped and ended as long as it benefited them. There was no recognition or no respect beyond that of themselves or the smaller group for which they were a member. It was something else you said as well that I wanted to comment on, but I forgot. But my point, bigger point being is when we talk about, I think it was John, I think 10 and 35, and Jesus was telling them, by this everyone will know that my disciples, if they shall be love among you one towards another. Um, the idea we take for granted, and I guess a lot of times not truly understanding what Jesus, God creator, actually embodies and more so is when if you had to give it one word, being love. Well, I say that to say that those native people, how they were raised, how did they live their lives, how it wasn't a religion they followed, it was just who they were. It is because they lived with a love and a compassion for everything, which is them participating in the creator or the macro as it is that we've been discussing. I'm finished.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Ron,
you.
well, Sheldon
Yes,
has
sir.
said that. What is a disciple today? What are we talking about? Because what we've described thus far in relationship being a disciple is totally spiritual. It's not someone sitting down at a desk with a textbook,
Correct.
with
Yes.
a pad taking notes from a. So let's. We want to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. Uh,
I'm talking about you.
I couldn't agree more in that. Oh, you want me to talk about it?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll start. I'll start the discussion, and that's exactly where I was headed. We are what they are describing to you in the scriptures is someone who actually sits down and, as you said, and follow him, and as we see in a physical way, and I think. While as the scriptures are written, they're written that way so that we can see. We can, because that's how we learn. We can picture this, we can see this, we can see them following him. But this is all spiritual. This is not just you sitting down and taking paper and pencil. You are becoming something. That's what I was getting at with the following. There is a transformation taking place with you. This is a continuous and ongoing thing, and I likened it to the I am because that is showing that this is a part of you that is far beyond time and space. This is the part of you that is pursuing something, and it pursues you. And when you notice it, by the time you take notice of it, you will have been transformed, or you notice that you're being transformed into something else. What is the something else? The something else is enlightenment. The something else is the awakening, a new place of consciousness, so that other people who can see you, who are maybe seeking the same things, or maybe not even sure about what they're seeking. But as Barbara mentioned, the vibrations, they feel what is in you. And as someone mentioned, they say, I don't know what it is about this person, but I like what I see, or I can identify with what they talk about or what they say. So it is not talking about a physical thing. And I'm not sure, I hope I'm kind of answering your question, but that's kind of where I was trying to go with this. We are disciples. That means that the things that we see and feel are not for us. Almost everybody that spoke yesterday talked about an apprehension that they were feeling. Well, we didn't discuss that, but everybody was feeling the same thing. If that were not the case, it would not have come up yesterday. So what we put out there in the macro is for all of those who are feeling anxious and who are looking for answers. That is available to them. If they're looking for truth, if they're looking for this in a spiritual way and not looking for some kind of comfort from the government, they are able to see this regardless of what your religious background might be, whether you speak English or not speak English, or what region of this globe you live in. You will be able to pick up on this comfort. That is being a disciple. And if somebody can explain it in another sense, I would appreciate it in another way, to make it simpler.
Ron, this is Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
Hey, I used to teach nurses, and so
Okay.
I want to take the physical, and then we'll flip that into what you just said in terms of the spiritual. When I taught them to do something, to perform a skill or a task, I did it, they watched. Then I did it, they helped. They did it, I helped. They did it, I watched. You see the progression there. I did it, they watched.
Yeah.
I did it, they helped. I did it, I mean, they did, I helped in, and then they did it, I watched. Flip that into the spiritual perspective and look at where we are spiritually today in terms of, if we say a disciple is one who surrenders themselves to following and to learning principles, kingdom principles, if you will. It's the same thing at a much higher level, and what the Creator expects of us now is not that we allow it to do it and we watch, or that we allow it to do it and we help. It expects us to do it. It may help, but it expects us to do it, and it watches. And when we are in sync with the thoughts and the, for lack of a better word, the mind of the Creator, that's what it expects. That shows the maturity in the disciple. I think in the spiritual, I mean, in the physical world today, when we think about a spiritual disciple, they stop at the raising from the dead and things like that, and you don't hear anything else about it. You don't hear how people progress and become the created being of the Creator. It just stops at, okay, what's this physical thing I can do or I cannot do? And so the truly elevated in terms of in terms of maturity, the truly mature disciple of the created being does, and the Creator watches, because we have the mind of the Anointed One, and our will is that of the Anointed One, not ours. And so there should be no reason why we always say, "Oh Lord, why me?" and "Help me, help me, help me." It's like Moses standing at the sea. You have what it takes in you. You do it.
Yes.
The end.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. That was beautifully said. A couple things came to me while. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I wanted to.
Go ahead, Pastor.
It's two things. I was going to comment on the idea of disciple, right? However, I want to see if Sheldon could repeat or do a summary of what he said earlier in relationship to disciple.
Now I'm a little stuck, like Ron. When I spoke towards a disciple, and I referenced John 10 and 35, and I couldn't remember earlier, some weeks back, we're teaching and looking at somewhere where Jesus said, we're talking about how the people would know who they represent or who had sent them. And it was talking about in John 10 and 35, the love that they are, that they're essentially represented bringing, just like the Pastor Richie was talking about earlier today, about certain people stepping in a room and people not understanding and knowing why, but just feeling different and saying, okay, there's something different about that particular person. And the key was in the other verses is Jesus is talking about the love that he shared with and had for the disciples. And that same exact love is the same love he was saying that they were to be. And as Jesus was talking about this, of course, he was talking about the love that is godly love, the love, I guess in a sense, from his father, which just mean that he was basically embodying his father. And those disciples were doing, in essence, the same exact thing. they were embodying that essence, they were embodying that spirit. Doing that did not have anything to do with any particular action, but it was how they lived their lives. And they lived their lives with that heart, that love, that compassion for themselves and the all. It is not, it was not a pursuit of just the intellect or thinking. It is more so of a knowledge and an understanding and embodying, and in terms of identity of who they were and their relationship to everything else. And I say that to say because they understood, and why, I guess, important part in understanding who and what we are. And I guess in certain terms, we can think of that as individuals. But what that changes when we involve love is to understand that who and what we are is a connection to these other things. It's not just something that we only look at ourselves as being individuals. And going back to the example that I said about the Native people saw their identity as tied and connected with all of these other things that the Europeans that we mentioned looked at as being separate. And with God, Jesus, helping the disciples and teaching them through all of this to understand their relationship to everything, their connection to everything, who and what they were being transformed, which was said earlier today, through that experience, and in becoming that and transforming into that, in essence, disciples. And they were disciples because whenever they showed up in the room, or they was essentially putting everything that Jesus had taught them in the macro. Now that which Jesus was and is was provided for everyone else to participate and find that and understand that within themselves. This is the same thing that we're doing now and have been doing, even if we did not have words for it or didn't understand it, which was that all of us have had a desire to know Jesus more intimately, um, but not only also for ourselves, but understanding and wanting everyone to participate in that as well. We have had or do have a reverence, an acknowledgement, compassion, empathy for the all. And that is how, I guess, in action, when we talk about the macro, what we're doing or have been doing and have been discussing. And please ask any questions if there are any questions so I could bring possibly more clarity if needed.
So let me see if I get what you're saying. Um, you are inferring that Jesus, by virtue of showing them how everything is connected and connecting that to how the indigenous people viewed the earth in relationship to their lives, we are speaking of something along the line of worship or submission to the spiritual uh, things that Jesus taught. For example, Jesus gave the disciples an understanding of how much, uh, I don't like the word control, how deeply they were connected to nature itself by when they went fishing and they couldn't catch anything, and he threw the net out. I told them to throw it again, and they were able to do that. When he told Peter to go catch the fish and find the coin to give to Caesar, those kinds of things, saying, teaching them the authority that we have with over nature, but more the relationship that we have with everything that's just natural. So a disciple becomes one who takes on the essence of its teacher, while and becomes submissive to that teacher um, because of the expanse of enlightenment that that teacher brings to them. And is not enlightenment that they understand necessarily at that moment, but it resonates so deeply with them until they not only hold on to it, but they accept it. When Jesus asked them, "Will you leave me also?" and they said, "To what will we go? We left everything." They were not talking about the business of fishing, because after when Jesus was crucified, they went back to fishing. They were talking about their belief systems. They were talking about what they had learned from the religious priests, from the religious pastors. In today's vernacular, that's what they were talking about. There is nothing left there. Why? Because we have learned that the things that we were taught are are not what was intended for us to be taught. We were told that we are um, to stone the woman who was caught in adultery, but not the man. Uh, we were told um, that we are to stone the one who is disobedient to parents, and on and on and on the Levitical law, and these are the things that Jesus cleared up in their thinking. And when Jesus was crucified, the reason they stayed in the upper room, it was mostly out of fear, because they knew that they were going to have to teach things that were controversial and that was adverse to what the priests were teaching. And they saw what happened to Jesus when he did that, and that was their apprehension. However, that when they allowed themselves to look beyond the fear and allowed themselves to feel, to experience the presence of the breath, the spirit within them, it is at that point that they not only gain the courage to move from the upper room, but they also um, started seeing, understanding the things that Jesus had taught them. And in doing so, they became the essence of not only what Jesus taught them, but became the essence of what they were teaching. So discipleship is about um, submitting yourself to the teachings of another. Church membership is about submitting yourself to a doctrine that men have written. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, and I want to talk just a little bit about when you were talking about submission and submissive. And I understand you said you don't care for that word. So I likened it
Control,
to,
control
yeah,
is the word I don't.
yeah, well, controlling. I likened it more to letting go. And what I mean by letting go, and it's going to tie into that experience. When we are very upset with someone, what we do is we, in a way, we set up a block from ourselves to that person. So for whatever reason that we're upset, it's not important right now, or we hold a grudge. And when we're upset and holding a grudge, and as long as we hold on to that grudge, and essentially we're having a wall up between ourselves and that person, it cuts ourselves off from that connection from that person in terms of having, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but we limit the amount of love and compassion that we may have for that person otherwise, or by the time we finally let go of our animosity towards this person, and then our love and compassion towards that person has an opportunity to grow. When we talk about letting go control or being submissive or letting it go in terms of what Jesus was doing with the disciples, or you have to do that in order to be a disciple, only thing we're talking about is the letting go of the small or limited way that we see and understand and view ourselves. Jesus was taking the disciples beyond their current understanding of themselves And they had to let that go before they can experience the connection greater than that. But that entailed, like I said, letting go. It doesn't mean that you're losing control. What you're essentially doing, what we're essentially doing, is we're only providing space to experience more that which unknowingly we were cutting off before. We're cutting ourselves off from the experience. Someone who is afraid to be vulnerable and afraid to be loved, they're closed off for whatever reason. That's besides the point. They cut off themselves from experiencing, or having certain experiences, feeling certain type of love and things like that, because they cut that off because they don't want to be hurt. And when we talk about disciples as well, all throughout the New Testament, Jesus had one particular message over and over and over again. I am not Jesus. I came as God. I embody the Father God. One. Two, you and I are one. We are the same. You have all the abilities, capabilities that I have. The entire time he was trying to essentially do what we're all talking about right now, which was connect the disciples to him, and for them to understand and see the recognition, and he did it in baby steps, that their connection to the Father. That's what he said over and over again throughout the scripture. I think it was John 15 we were looking at a month or two ago, and he just kept on talking about the love of the Father, and then the love that he had for the disciples, and the disciples participated in that same exact love. He was one by one making that connection, and it was, and in that time it was because, of course, the disciples could only see themselves as being individuals, or at least that's where they started off anyway. At the same time, they thought of all this stuff, and they in a sense, honored God. So Jesus was trying to get them to let go of the sense of identity of themselves that they were currently holding on to and felt comfortable with, to expand them so that they could experience the love through first one-on-one through them through a daily basis, and then understanding their connection not only through Jesus, but to realize as they were walking this discipleship for their connection to all, for their connection to the macro, and hence the love and compassion of the universe, the creator, etc.
Okay.
Okay. What were you going to say, Ron? Because I wanted to try to make a statement here.
Go ahead.
Are we good?
I go ahead. Huh?
Go
Go ahead, Pastor.
Ron. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
I'm
would
gonna
just,
make an effort to task.
Thank you.
okay. The only thing I wanted to say is, and I think Sheldon just did, you and Sheldon just did that, and Barbara did too in her explanation of as a teacher. This thing has twofold. The surrendering and making room to understand more. And the disciple also, the fisher of men, say that you are a conduit. You are learning something so that you can enlighten others. You are teaching others. And that is the love that everybody has talked about. So as I listened yesterday and my expectations for this coming year and maybe beyond, we never stop being disciples. We never stop being learners. We never stop being, there's always more enlightenment. There are more vibrations that you will feel. There are more senses of awareness that we will be elevated to, for lack of a better term. You are also obligated through that love to also be the comfort for those who may need comforting, or those who may need someone who sit with them or explain something to them, or just meditate on things so that people can pick up on enlightenment that is out there that you may never even lay eyes on. So as this year comes out and the apprehension or the discomfort, or as we have already stated, those who are looking for the ordinary or the sense of bringing me back what I had, and they see that that is not going to come back, that's where your energy comes into play. And that's why I thought this to be important to see where we are, and to also understand that this speaks to each and every one of us on the phone. It is not talking to pastor or the teachers, or this is everybody has an opportunity if they desire to be a disciple. You can be someone who has a desire to learn and to be enlightened so that you can be a help for others. That is what this whole thing is all about. So if any other question on what I've said, I'm going to leave it to Pastor to kind of sum some things up and close us out, even if he will. Okay. Any questions on what was said, what has been said?
Yeah, Ron, before Pastor gives us an overview, I just wanted to just say that in my reading, it was my understanding that Jesus did a lot of this teaching for his disciples out in nature. It wasn't in the church. It wasn't in the building. It was out in nature. And so when Sheldon was talking about the Navajo or the Indians, it just made me think in terms of how, were they able to be taught by one another, and how did they learn? And it's just something that when they were able to sit around the fire, and fire was such a strong symbol in terms of, them being able to come together in a circle, and the focus of the center of the circle. And there was a Navajo Indian that I met, from some years ago, and I was asking him, how, do you deal with, issues in terms of injustice, or, deal with issues in terms of things that are wrong. And he drew out a diagram where he started out by just drawing a fire. And then that fire was the center. And then around the center, there were concepts that they discussed. But I'm only trying to relate it to what you shared today in terms of John, because it gives us another way to appreciate culture in terms of, how the spirit leads, versus us looking at it in a traditional sense in terms of how we were taught traditionally. So I think that being open to nature, being open to the truth, and being a disciple, who is willing to be taught by another. And that's what we talk about, is to continue to be a learner. So we all are aspiring, to have a deeper understanding. And I just wanted to share that thought in terms of just how, the Navajo Indians or indigenous people dealt with some of the same things we talk about in terms of how we learned in Christianity. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, George. And you're exactly right. Those are things that we are taught not to pay a lot of attention to, that those are not important. And all of those are lessons. I mentioned this to Pastor. I like National Geographic, and they were showing these Africans who were farmers, and they planted in the jungle, and they knew where to put corn, what next to which plant, and all the plants that all the crops that they grew in the jungle without disturbing anything. And and at the end of it all, they knew when to leave. When they said that the ground was exhausted, the ground was tired, they get their crops out that they put in and move on to somewhere else. But they would not disturb what was in the jungle. They knew what plants grew with which plants and how to get the best nourishment from it and still be one with nature. And it's a beautiful thing when we can see harmony at work, love and harmony at work. And you're exactly right. And hopefully we'll one day get there. We'll one day get to that place of peace. Pastor, you want to hopefully make you forget what you were wanting to tie in?
No. I know we'll get to that place of peace and harmony. We will, definitely. That's our desire. Um,
Yeah.
when George was talking about the Navajo, the idea of circle, um, that is the reason indigenous people built their living quarters in a circle because they felt, because they believed that the spirit could move in that circle. And a lot of indigenous people will not live in a room or a house or a building that has corners because they believe that the spirit get trapped in those corners, and it an impediment to their oneness with the spirit. Moving from that and looking at what we have discussed today, um, the disciple is one who trusts the teacher to make make it aware of what's in it. The disciple is no different than who we are in that the teachings that we are receiving are not telling us something that's not already there. It's making us aware of what was there, what has been there rather, since the beginning. So when we look at the concept, when I think it's Andrew who said he left fishing as well as his father, that is significant in that he left a womb, his natural womb. So he left the authority that he lived under. Um, Presumably, by him leaving, the father was in the household with him. So the whole idea of being uh, um, a disciple is also uh, make sure that you're making sure that we are submissive of the authority of the Creator as opposed to the authority of our earthly father or earthly religions. So today, what we have explored is really submission to the teachings. Why is necessary? It is necessary because of the era that we are living in. We must be more attentive and have a deeper awareness of what's happening, but also a deeper awareness of what we are being made or taught or made aware of. So, right now, the the things that are necessary for our focus is love and kindness, peace and harmony. And the reason I say that is because we have already the the reasoning for receiving the vaccine. We have explored and understanding that um, bondage is larger than America. That discomfort in this world is larger than America. However, the discomforting of indigenous people has its genesis in America. So digging up this root or killing the root of the genesis of this discomfort by virtue of depending on what we were created to be, we are able to do that. Saying that the disciple does not go to Caesar, the disciple does not go to a political administration for for it to benefit humanity. The disciple um, goes to its source, and in going to its source, it becomes apostolic, meaning that it becomes the teacher. As we are on this phone this morning and in previous times, we are both at any moment. We are a disciple, and then the next moment we become apostolic in terms of teaching. And there are those on the phone who are hearing for the first time or hearing continuously and are in the state of being disciple for the purpose of being apostolic, of being a teacher with those, and knowing that being an apostolic being a teacher does not come without troubles. You will be faced with adversity when you begin to teach the truth of what's in the scriptures. That adversity must be faced with courage, and that courage comes from embracing who you are, because you understand that no earthly power can overcome who you are, the essence of your being, and can never displease, discount what the truth is. They may have they may speak against it, but they cannot change the fact that the truth resonates with humanity, whether they understand it or not. It just feels right. Are there any questions about that? Because if not, I'm done. All comments for that matter. Right.
Thank you. I think that sums it up. I think that sums up the lesson. I have no questions or comments. Okay. Well, I offer again, if at some point you have a question or a comment, feel free to text one of us, and that's what we'll begin with on next week. Okay. I hope everyone has a thought. I hope this was clear, and look forward to seeing you next week. All right. Thank you. Have a good New Year, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Happy New Year.